God will work with you, but not for you. By Lao Russell. Chapter 1.
Continued.
The 11th Hour. Let us therefore transform the world by the renewing of the world mind. That transformation can take place only by acquiring knowledge of man's inseparable and eternal moment-to-moment unity with a comprehensible God, and of man's unity with man, woman, and nature. The world could have had a dynamic knowledge of God and of his relationship with man long ago, instead of the vague imaginings it now has, if it had comprehended Jesus' teachings. He told man to look within himself to find the answer to all things. What did he mean by that? What is there within man which could be the kingdom of heaven and all things else? He meant mind. He meant that all there is in this universe is mind and body, which means creator and creation, and which also means cause and effect. And that is the answer to all things. It is the complete answer to what God, nature, man-woman, energy, silence, sound, stillness, motion, and all things else are. God's mind and the electric pulsations of his divided thinking constitute the entirety of this universe. Beyond that, there is naught else. God's omniscient, omnipotent, living, conscious mind is eternally at rest. God's electric thinking is eternally in motion. His electric creative thinking extends from centers of stillness to create bodies which live for a period of time to manifest his knowledge of power and action. All living bodies thus extended from him to express his energy by action must then return to him for a period of rest, before again extending into another pulsation of action. This is the principle known as reincarnation, or repetition of body patterns, which is the characteristic process of nature. Man conceives these thought pulsations of the living, thinking God to be living and dying bodies of people who have identity and reality. In this tragic misconception lies all the ills which man has made for himself, all of them, without exception, from business failures to divorces, from degenerative diseases to wars, from frustrations to insanity, and from the periodic rise and fall of whole civilizations. Oh, the pity of it! And why? Simply because men of that day did not comprehend what Jesus meant when he plainly told them that they could find God within themselves, and then all things else would be added unto them. Instead of comprehending and believing him, the mass mind of the world, then and now, looks outward toward transient, pulsing bodies of living, dying physical matter for their realities, instead of to their centering spiritual soul mind. Man did just the opposite of what Jesus taught, and made for himself a way of life which has led always to catastrophe and oblivion. He looked outside of himself for his sense of values, and chose transient, pulsing, living, dying bodies of material things for his choice possessions, which he thought would enrich him. He looked away from his spiritual self to find love and happiness in mere sensation of interchange with physical bodies of pulsing motion, which had naught but motion in them to give. He looked away from the one great reality within which all power reposed, into the unreality of transient materialism for the power he coveted, and took unto himself a mirage which dissolved itself into its own emptiness. Even the greatest of intellectuals looked the other way, away from the still fulcrum source of all energy, to endow pulsing vibrations of motion with energy. Even they looked for cause in the transient effects of cause. Is it any wonder, then, that the old way of life which man has chosen to follow has never led him to happiness and peace? Has any way of life ever led to happiness, peace, and prosperity which was based upon greed for material possessions and power? Not one thing of man's creating has endured when man looked outward, and away from the spirit which centred him. On the other hand, those immortal creations of man which have endured and will endure as long as civilization lasts, are those works of the spiritual geniuses who have been illumined by the awakening of that divine spark which centres every man. Such words are created in the ecstasy and inspiration of their mind source, and reflect the rhythms of God's thinking in them, while the works of man-bodies, who knows naught but the rhythms of body sounds, live but for the day and are forgotten. The new way of life, which is based upon God-awareness within, is now necessary, else we perish. Man's old way of life has always built a world of fear, hatred, enmity, and disunity, the policy being to take from his neighbour that which he wanted for himself by the power of might over right. The old way, which has proved so disastrous, was based upon taking, which created enemies who show their hatred by retaking. The new way will be based upon giving, which creates friends who show their love by re-giving. In my husband's Message of the Divine Iliad are these words: "All men shall come to me in due time, but theirs is the agony of awaiting." By working knowingly with God's universal laws, our present agony of awaiting can be over, and all men and women can look forward to living in heavenly peace and happiness as one united world family. It is a tremendous challenge and a tremendous goal, but it is a prize in which all mankind can share. Chapter 2. Who am I? Who am I? What am I? Why am I here? Man has eternally sought for the answers to these vital questions all down the long ages. The great fact of life is that life must be lived, and man's strongest instinct is to live. He tenaciously clings to life with all the zeal of his being. He does not yet know who he is, his identity, his individuality, what he is, or the why of so many things which bewilder him. Day by day he faces that one supreme fact that he is here, and must live and work to survive. He must forever climb mysterious heights beyond his present level, and always they seem elusive, unreachable, unknowable. He very forcibly senses his existence as a living being, but he sees no meaning to existence. He intuitively feels that he has a destiny and purpose for which he is forever groping along the tortuous road that leads out of the dark of his early beginnings to the unknown light of his seeking. All down the ages, life has begun in the dark of not knowing the great secret of man's oneness and identity with God. Even though he may have been told of it, the telling had no meaning. The path ahead was still as dark and as bewildering. In this crucial hour of world danger, these vital questions of the identity and purpose of man must now be known and fully comprehended. To remain in ignorance of the meaning of man and his high place in the unfolding of God's supreme idea is holding each man back who is not aware of it. It is likewise retarding the progress of the whole human race from discovering its divine destiny. Before answering these vital questions, I say to you in all earnestness that new knowledge, based upon new concepts, and written in a necessarily new language, is not a book for casual or light reading. All new knowledge requires great mental effort. It would be impossible to acquire more than a small percentage of what is herein written in one reading. It is a book for a lifetime study, not for a day. It is not written to entertain, but rather to inspire those who are ready for the next vital stage in man's unfolding. We are at the threshold of the cosmic age, wherein man will begin to recognize his divine relationship to the Creator and his oneness with all creation. To attain such knowledge is to attain power to command one's body and one's destiny. That supreme goal is well worth supreme effort. Those who are ready for it will make that effort, just as one who has a great desire to be the head of a large industrial plant or a concert pianist will make that effort with love as his motivating force. Let me recall to your mind the fact that everyone can reach the highest goal in life if he desires to and is willing to make the effort. Those who are willing to make the effort will find that genius is self-bestowed, while the unwilling ones will find that failure is self-inflicted. Every child has consummate genius in him at birth. What he does with his divine inheritance is dependent upon the intensity of his desire to express himself. That is why the answers to these three great human questions are so necessary for your comprehension. Question: who am I? Answer: you are a divine, immortal, invisible soul. You center a visible physical body which consists solely of thought waves of motion, created for the purpose of manifesting your divinity. Your divine immortal soul is one with the Creator of the universe. That is what Jesus meant when he said, "I and my Father are one, and what I am, ye also are." Many have told us these facts, but because man thinks of his body as himself, he has found it difficult to accept the idea of his own divinity. This fact is not difficult to accept by the few who have already been illumined from within. These few know God within them. These are the ones who have heard the silent voice of their souls whispering to them in rhythms which finally had meaning. There are many today who walk and talk and work knowingly with God, and God works with them to make their work masterly. These who have learned to manifest God on earth have re-inspired others to know their divinity. They commune with God in moment-to-moment awareness of Him, and are the few who uplift the many, showing them the way out of the dark into the light.